I'm the president of Bristol Revunions. We're the uni's sketch comedy and stand-up society. We're all very silly, very funny. And we like to have a laugh.
I'm Hannah. I'm the secretary for the society. I basically just do the admin, but I'm also funny sometimes.
Hi, I'm Serena. I'm vice president. I run the workshops and I like promoting revs. It's kind of my personality at this point. And yeah, I just love being in revs.
I'm the Equalities and Diversity rep and the external gigs. And I just join revs because it's actually a really nice group of people to hang out with. They're very sweet. Yeah, there you go.
I'm Fred. I'm the treasurer of revs, which means I look after the money, which is good because there's not tons of it. We have a lot of money, but I joined revs because it seemed like a lot of fun from Give It a Goes and whatnot, and I thought I want to be in that.
As a society, we run weekly workshops making and performing comedy sketches, and we put on shows every couple months or so, hopefully more frequently this year. And it's a really fun way of like being creative. Even if you're interested in comedy at all, then making stuff that is funny is just a nice way to get stuff out your system, and you can make something really nice with stressful things and have a lot of fun with it and make lots of lovely friends, because everyone in the society is genuinely really lovely. But yeah, it's a good laugh.
So first question for everybody is what does comedy kind of mean to you all, and why do you enjoy it, if anybody has anything in particular they can think of?
I think comedy is just a really good way to kind of break down barriers, like even in social situations, especially in an age where like people are kind of more socially awkward and more used to being online. It can kind of be a bit tense sometimes. So when you kind of break down the barriers by like just doing a little joke or just being silly or even just being stupid and letting people laugh at you, it kind of eases the tension. And it's just a good way. It creates like a sense of warmness, I guess, which is what I really like about comedy. And then with like performing comedy as well, you can kind of critique things and communicate things you're going through, which is a really good way to discuss things, I guess.
And kind of on that, do you kind of feel like there are times such as now when comedy's like important, not only for fun, but you know, for times when you've got a room and you're doing a stand-up show and you think, oh yeah, this is something that people need in a way. Do you ever feel like that kind of runs through comedy or not?
I think it's quite nice when I heard a term called like building laughter, like someone says something funny, like the stand up, and you have one person laugh, and then that they continue the joke, and the people start out quiet, but then it kind of builds and builds and builds till you're all laughing together, and I think that's really nice. And it's also just like it feels very connected because you're all sort of having the same reference to like what they're saying, but you are also laughing at like your own kind of interpretation of what they're saying. But I think it's just really lovely to kind of come together and just like start out kind of quiet, a little bit conscious of like your laughter, and then you have one person who's like always having the best laugh, and then everyone joins in, and it just feels really lovely. I don't know, just like coming and laughing, and then it quietens down, and that happens like multiple times throughout a stand-up set. So it's just like nice experience altogether. And then you leave and you're all happy and you're chatting and you've got something to talk about as well. Like it just feels very connected.
When you're doing stand-up, do you feel like you have a specific power or responsibility when obviously you're kind of conducting an audience in front of you and speaking to them? How does that feel, and kind of how do you tackle the responsibility of that?
I think there is a certain responsibility to it, because if you want to make jokes about things that are difficult subjects from sort of any perspective, you have a responsibility, I think, to be kind about it, because not every comedian is kind about a lot of things, and a lot of stand-up can be just sort of making fun of stuff. One of my sets I talk about going to Catholic school, and I'm not Catholic, but I had a interesting experience there. And it took me a really long time to figure out how to write about it without coming across as being discriminatory, because I genuinely don't have a problem with people being religious. I just had a bad experience with it. So I think you've got a responsibility to, even if you've had a negative experience of something, if the way that you're talking about it is going to potentially affect someone or bring up history that is fraught or unpleasant in any way, you can make jokes that are respectful and that point out inconsistencies and hypocrisy without targeting people who are going to be affected by it, if that makes sense.
We've got people today such as Russel Brand, when we're looking back at their performances and we're seeing things in stand-up comedy that would arguably not go down as well today because of a new influence of, I put it in the questions, there's this new kind of ongoing question of woke culture in comedy and being able to say things you couldn't say before. Kind of runs off what you were just saying. How do you feel about that, and how do you draw your material when you're thinking about the people you're delivering it to and how to approach that with sensitivity?
I feel like if you just kind of tackle it like everyday life, and even if you really look at it from that lens, even just everyday conversations, there's always kind of some sort of responsibility to, not offend anyone. And especially when you're writing things and you're going through it and you're practicing it and you're refining it, you just have to make sure you're not going to do anything stupid or say anything stupid. But I mean, yeah, there's a responsibility even just every day. And I think if you don't believe anything offensive, then you're not really going to say anything offensive. And if you trust yourself, even if you do a bit of crowd work or anything like improvised, as long as you know you don't have offensive opinions, then you should be okay, I think. Yeah.
On the note of things that used to be not okay but acceptable, I think people are just more vigilant about it, and I think that you can say something and not think it's offensive, and then either realise afterwards or be told by someone, that's not an okay thing to say. And I think, especially in a medium where I think people kind of just absorb a lot of things from comedians, and maybe subconsciously their opinions and biases might seep through. Even if you don't think something's offensive, it could have negative consequences later on. And I think keeping that vigilance of telling people, hey, don't do that again, I think is important.
I think you should be open to critiquing. I think sometimes with the whole cancel culture, yes, it can become quite extreme, but I think a lot of people perhaps need to understand that it's just someone offering an opinion and critiquing you and saying perhaps maybe that isn't the right way to phrase it, or this isn't for you to make a joke of. They're not trying to do it in a malicious way or to cancel you outright. And I think sometimes people take other people critiquing and their opinions on their stand-up set too seriously and say you're trying to cancel me. And I say that going to that extreme isn't helpful to anyone, because if you're going to extreme, the person who's critiquing you then perhaps will go to an extreme because they're trying to not match your energy. But if someone is suddenly taking what you're saying is so seriously and that you're trying to cancel them, maybe that then affects the way that you're approaching how you're critiquing them. So I think just in terms of cancel culture, just be open to being critiqued. They're not trying to bring you down. There's not a whole army against you. And I think but I think people sometimes take critiquing as they're being cancelled, and then that doesn't get us anywhere, because then they say opinions that perhaps they don't even think fully through, that they're not that extreme in terms of their opinion on cancel culture, woke comedy, but they feel like they have to double down on what they say because they are someone is trying to critique me personally. And I think if you're at that stage where you've done stand-up for a long time and you might be a big name in stand-up, or you know the environment, I don't think I think that's just a negative way of looking at critiquing. And I think that just ultimately like harms everyone.
I guess if you build on the like critiquing thing, because it's always a good thing, because you don't want to just be talking to a bubble of people who are always going to find you funny, because then you just probably become unfunny. I don't know. Is that, yeah? And like, I guess also if you're writing with people, if you're writing with the same people and you don't share it with anyone else or test it on anyone else, then it might just be you guys that find it funny. And then also then people then fall into the danger of like all of those people writing like maybe like offensive things because they're only doing it to like a certain group of people, I guess. I don't know.
I feel like there's been a real uptick in the last couple of years of a lot of comedians like people like Ricky Gervais being like, you can't say anything these days, can't talk about anything without somebody going after you. And it's like, well, you can, but you're also not immune to criticism. Nobody who has been cancelled, there's so few people who have been cancelled that haven't regained their careers afterwards. Even people who are cancelled for like really serious things, most of the time, they're doing fine. Like, because realistically, somebody dogpiling on someone on Twitter isn't going to do that much to hurt their career. No, you can't stop people from joking about things that are bad. But ultimately, there's lots of people who are willing to joke about things that are very nice, and you can be funny whilst also being culturally aware and politically aware. And if, quite frankly, if you can't joke about things without somebody else being the butt of the joke or a group of people being the butt of the joke, if that's the only thing you're capable of joking about, you probably need to work on being funny. Like, and not in a rude way, because I feel like it's kind of mean to just be like, you're not funny. But yeah, I don't know.
And also, if the butt of the joke is a community that you're not a part of, then maybe give that joke to the people that are aware of the nuances of that community, that their audience might be from the same community, that they can then develop a better joke than your one sentence line kind of shocking so everyone laughs.
I would also maybe say, obviously, you guys might disagree as the actual comedians, but would you agree that there's maybe ways that you can use more sensitive, risky topics, perhaps, to encourage some progress out of it, or to encourage people to talk about it in a more positive way or in a more like resolving way, I guess?
I think you can definitely communicate and critique through doing that. Because at the end of the day, with joking, something's being critiqued. And especially if you're coming from that demographic that is experiencing that, you can communicate it to people who don't go through it and explain what's going on and why it's harmful, and then also critiquing it to other people who can relate. And it's a nice way to kind of let go and release kind of the tension of those situations. That's why I think it's definitely more important for people who actually experience those things to joke about it, rather than someone who might belong to the demographic that's actually causing the damage. And there's like a whole art of like just like clowning and like pantomime, which people forget about, which is literally just being silly, which I think should be done more. I think it's a lot better and it's just fun, you know.
But I do think you can use comedy to talk about like serious topics, because obviously, if you're in a room and you're all there with the aim to talk about this topic in a serious manner, then it kind of creates an area where people perhaps don't want to explore ideas that maybe they're not too sure on. I feel like you need to come with a complete sort of fully formed idea that you have on that maybe taboo or topic that we need to talk about, because it's not like it's become culturally relevant. So I think humour and the fact that it's more relaxed, not saying that should allow discrimination, harassment. That's not what I'm saying, because obviously that's going to the extreme. But I think using humour to sort of lighten people's moods, make people feel like it's less serious and you can talk about it without being reprimanded for not perhaps having a fully formed idea. So I think it is useful in terms of like talking about discrimination and the issues like that.
What would you guys give advice in terms of supporting and listening to how you would recommend maybe the right people in comedy? If there's a way you would tell audiences to seek out people who maybe you think should be listened to more in a time where there's obviously a lot of attention on the kind of kings of comedy that are kind of being criticised now.
Open mics are just a great night because that's how most comedians get started, because I feel like comedy is definitely a less competitive way of getting into performing, and you'll see lots of funny things because people are just a lot more relatable, and even though it's less refined, I feel like people are kind of working harder. Even though it's less competitive, you still really want to get out there and get your stuff seen.
Shop around. Like you said, honestly, some of the best stand-up sets I've seen have been in like a random room, because they are working on their material for ages and they are just trying so hard, and they're not using the fact that they are already famous to be like the semi joke, you know, because I sometimes do find myself in a trap where I really like this stand-up comedian and I'm watching their set and I'm laughing, but sometimes I think, would that joke be as funny on its own if it wasn't said by you? Which, I mean, that's a part of being a stand-up. I guess it's like a personality behind your set. But I think just shop around, because there's some really funny people out there. And like the Fringe, don't go just for the people with the reviews, because there's a lot of people and it's hard to get people to write reviews. And I think we all know that, yet we still just go for where the reviews are. So and also if it's rubbish, then it's rubbish. Like, it doesn't matter if it's not always a hit. Just broaden your horizons a little bit.
Just had a thought, it's not even a question really, but down to the bone of what you said about personalities as well. I think that's obviously strikingly relevant to what we're talking about now, because it's about saying things that you kind of can get away with and he could get away with because he built that personality. So that's why I feel like conversations like this are important, because it's a reminder of why you do comedy instead of how you've built something and become something. So maybe kind of final-ish question in a nice way, like how do you feel when you're doing something good in stand-up, and how does it feel, and why do you enjoy that, and kind of pushing to why we do comedy in the first place, really?
I love doing stand-up because I'm an attention seeker. But it's also just nice to like see people laughing at something that you've thought of and something that you've worked really hard on making funny. And I'm not really joking about comedians being just wanting attention, but also I think most comedians do just want to like make people kind of happy and make people laugh, in a way that I don't know if, I mean, other forms of entertainment obviously will do that, but comedy specifically, you're not there to upset people, you know? It's just really nice. Like, you have a room full of people who are enjoying themselves, and you have other comedians who have worked so hard on their stuff as well, and you're all kind of like together. It's a very weird feeling, but it's a very nice feeling that I can't really put a finger on.
I'm the opposite. I hate stand-up, but I force myself to do it through Revs, actually, so go Revs. But when I do force myself to do it, most of the times when I write about things, it's like annoying situations or like things that have gone wrong, or like just annoying stuff that I've been going through. And it's a nice way to turn that into something a bit more positive. And when you're giving it away to the audience and they're laughing back at you, like, or with you, it's a nice feeling, because it kind of just erases all the other stuff that's happened.
Time you do it, you kind of realise that you get in the groove of just noticing things going on in everyday life. You approach things with more of an like, how can I make this funny? How can I kind of use this in like my set? So it kind of just changes the way that you approach things. Like if something embarrassing happens, you're not like, oh my God. It's like, oh, well, I know it's a well-known phrase, but it's for the plot. Like it just changes the way that you kind of go about your life. And you're also more aware of the things around you, because you're kind of searching for material, or even looking back on your school life as in for stories. Like, it's a good reflective tool on like what have I done in my life, and it feels quite nice to go back in those memories and ideas and laugh at them, and it's just a good way of sort of changing your perspective on how you see your history and how you kind of operate every day.
For me personally, I found it quite beneficial, because I was going to say recent traumatic events. That's exaggerating, but it's like, like my dog died very recently, and I was able to turn that into comedy to sort of help me process it, but also, I guess, kind of in a sort of subtle way to let everyone know that it had happened without me going up to them and just saying. It was so useful, but also helped me process it. And I think that's true for a lot of people. And I think it's a powerful tool.
This is just silly, but it's fun to just like bamboozle people, the audience, to just be like, do a weird thing and people be like, what's going on right now? Like, this is funny. That was funny. And it's, live experience, live show, group experience, all of that. It's just so good. Yeah.
Bristol Reunion! We are the University Sketch, Comedy and Stand-Up Society. We're very open, welcoming to anyone and everyone. It's not competitive at all. We're here for everyone. We do weekly workshops, 6 to 8 p.m. in the Anson Rooms bar. Again, anyone can come. It's loads of fun. Even if you don't want to get involved, you can just watch and have fun and just laugh if you like comedy. We do shows. We do a monthly show at Z Alley, which is called Dynamite, which is with our sister society Improv, where there's improvised games, there's stand-up, hopefully some sketches as well. We have a Halloween show coming up, which will be the 3rd of November, with our sister society Improv. It's collaborating with BCA, Bristol Collaborative Arts, as well. We'll be looking for performers and writers. There's an improvised half, so they'll be looking for performers as well. And yeah, that'll be fun.